Thank you. Mr. Colby, the Vice President characterized you as a truth teller, someone who would tell the truth to power, and yet today you've not told truth of who started the war in Ukraine. I'll give you one more chance. Who started the war in Ukraine?
Well, Senator, I would tell the truth. I don't think I'm saying anything that's untrue, but I also think it's important to be discreet and say things at the appropriate time and place.
The problem is, you tell us you're going to tell truth to power. The most obvious truth is that Russia invaded Ukraine. Everybody in the world knows that. And you won't say it here today because it appears that you don't want to offend the president. But that's the whole point of the vice president's testimony, that you would say truth to power, but you won't do it here today on the record. This is an obvious truth. Reminds me of the old country song, who are you going to believe, me or your own lying eyes? We all saw it.
Well, Senator, the way I see it, sir, is that diplomacy, especially a very delicate period where I'm hoping personally hoping that things very much get back on track and head towards
But
peace.
shouldn't diplomacy be based on the truth? Well, you've made your non-point, I suppose. Let's talk about terrorism. Deterrence doesn't work with terrorism. That's one of the problems, and I'm afraid this country has taken its eye off of terrorism. You talk about China, others have talked about the Middle East, but terrorism is a consistent threat. ISIS-K is trying to make a comeback in Syria. Al-Qaeda is active in Afghanistan and other places. But deterrence doesn't work. They don't have a capital city to blow up. They don't care about dying. Intelligence is our best defense against terrorism, and yet we're seeing the greatest loss of jobs, of firings in the CIA in something like 50 years. Talk to me about how do we deal with the threat of terrorism when we're cutting our intelligence capacity?
Well, Senator, I very much agree with you about the enduring threat of terrorism. In fact, when I wrote my book, I thought, and I did the defense strategy with others back in 2017, 2018, this is something I was very much thinking of. In fact, a little personal, I mean, I was walking with my two sons, who obviously don't remember this, but on last 9/11, and conveying to them how vividly I remember that. So that is not something that I take for granted. And we do have, a transnational jihadi terrorism. So I think this absolutely does, and my argument would be, and if confirmed, I would ensure, to the extent it was in my power, that preventing terrorist attacks against Americans and our allies where possible should be an enduring role of the American military. Obviously, that's a critical part of intelligence as well.
But as I've thought about this for many years, intelligence is really the best defense. Deterrence doesn't work, as I said, and yet we're eviscerating our intelligence capability as we're sitting here today.
Well, Senator, I couldn't speak intelligently. I just reading the news reports about what exactly is going on in terms of at the CIA and others. But I have confidence that Director Radcliffe and others are making things more efficient, more focused, more lethal. I know they're trying to make, in fact, try to encourage, as far as I understand, try to encourage case officers and others to go into more dangerous assignments precisely to prevent such an outcome.
I hope you're right. Just a note on Taiwan. To me, one of the critical questions is how much is Taiwan committed to its own defense? It's disturbing to me that in recent months, the Parliament of Taiwan has moved to cut their defense budget. And how are we to be expected to think about sending Americans into harm's way on behalf of a entity that doesn't seem all that interested in protecting itself? Are you disturbed by that move in the Taiwanese Parliament?
I'm profoundly disturbed, Senator, and I think the question that you're raising is one that I've heard not only Democrats but Republicans raise often in private. Secretary Mattis, who was mentioned earlier, said we can't care more about your defense than you can. So this is where I think I've been trying in my communication and my recommendations for policy vis-a-vis Taiwan to try to induce them in whatever way possible to become, say, more like South Korea. So it's a very plausible model with a much more serious military, because not only do I don't think it's fair to Americans to ask Americans and our servicemen and women to suffer at great if our allies are not pulling their weight, but also that it won't even be viable.
One more truth to power question. Last week, the United States ceased supporting the restoration and protection of the electric grid in Ukraine, which the Russians have continuously targeted. Yesterday, the administration announced its cutoff of military aid to Ukraine. Do you believe that those two things together, undermining the security of Ukraine in this critical moment, are good ideas?
Senator, as I said, I think the critical thing at this point is for advance in the peace process and for us, including Kiev, to cooperate. I think there's an opportunity.
You're all about policy. I'm asking, do you think the cutoff of aid to Ukraine yesterday is good policy?
Well, Senator, I'm only seeing the reports recently, but I think we need to I think the president has a plan for us to end this war and a sustainable model for a secure and sovereign Ukraine and a Europe that can, be more defensible. And I think that's the route that we should all take.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.